After being fired, she inherits her dad's fortune and returns. Ex-husband was shocked and wants her back. Scarlett sat down on a bench across from the Morrison Creative Agency building. She stared up at the 15th floor at Brendan's corner office. The blinds were open now. She could see two figures moving around inside. Have you ever walked into a room expecting one thing and found your entire life was a lie? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. Scarlett believed in fairy tales. She believed in love. She believed in her husband Brendan and her best friend Jessa. She worked 60-hour weeks at Morrison Creative Agency. Yeah, the irony wasn't lost on anyone that she shared a last name with the company, even though she had zero connection to the owners. She just happened to marry a man whose last name matched her workplace. But on this particular Tuesday morning in downtown Chicago, Scarlett's world was about to shatter like glass hitting concrete. She walked into the office building, her heels clicking against the marble floor. The security guard, Marcus, smiled and waved. "Morning, Mrs. Morrison. Coffee smells good today." She laughed, holding up her vanilla latte. "It better be, Marcus. Big presentation today." The elevator hummed as it carried her to the 15th floor. She hummed along to the music, completely unaware that her husband had already been in the office for 2 hours. Completely unaware that her best friend since college had arrived even earlier. Have you ever walked into a room expecting one thing and found your entire life was a lie? Scarlett pushed open the glass doors to the agency. The morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows. She could see Brendan's corner office, the one with the view of Lake Michigan. The blinds were drawn, which was weird because Brendan loved natural light. She knocked on his door. No answer. "Brendan." She turned the handle. The door swung open. There, bent over Brendan's mahogany desk, was her best friend Jessa. Her red hair spilled across the financial reports. And behind her, still in his wedding ring, was her husband of 3 years. Time stopped. Jessa's green eyes went wide. "Scarlett, we didn't expect." "Expect what?" Scarlett's voice came out as a whisper. "Expect me to come to work? At my job?" Brendan didn't even look embarrassed. He straightened his tie like nothing happened. "We need to talk." "We need to talk?" Scarlett laughed, but it sounded hollow. "We need to talk about what?" "About how my husband is sleeping with my best friend in his office." "Do you know someone who's been betrayed like this? Someone who gave everything to people who gave nothing back." Jessa stood up, smoothing down her skirt. "Scarlett, this isn't what it looks like." "Really? Because it looks like you're screwing my husband." "Don't be dramatic," Brendan said. He walked around the desk like he owned the world. "Sit down. We have something to tell you." Scarlett's hands were shaking. "I'm not sitting down. I'm not doing anything you tell me to do." "Actually, you are." Brendan's voice turned cold. Ice cold. "Because as of this morning, you're fired." The words hit her like a physical blow. "What?" "You're terminated. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out." Jessa wouldn't meet her eyes. "Scarlett, we try to find another way." "Another way to do what?" Brendan smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Another way to get you out of our lives." Have you ever felt the ground disappear from under your feet? Have you ever realized that everything you thought was real was actually a performance? Our lives. Scarlett stared at them. "How long has this been going on?" 2 years, Jessa whispered. 2 years. While Scarlett planned their anniversary dinners. While she defended Jessa to other friends who said she was fake. While she worked overtime to help Brendan's company succeed. "Get out," Brendan said. "Security is coming." As if on cue, 2 guards appeared in the doorway. Not Marcus from downstairs. 2 different men. Bigger men. Men who looked like they were used to removing people who didn't want to leave. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us." Scarlett looked at her husband. Her best friend. These 2 people she would have died for. "You planned this," she said quietly. "You planned all of this." Brendan shrugged. "Sometimes you have to cut dead weight." Dead weight. 3 years of marriage. 5 years of friendship with Jessa, and she was dead weight. The security guards were gentle but firm. They walked her to her desk, the small one by the copy machine, not in the corner, not with a view. She packed her things into a cardboard box while the entire office watched. 43 employees, all of them staring, all of them whispering. Some looked sorry for her. Others looked relieved it wasn't them. As the elevator doors closed, Scarlett saw Brendan's arm around Jess's waist through the glass office walls. They were laughing. But what Scarlett didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know as those elevator doors sealed shut, was that in exactly 4 hours, her phone would ring with news that would change everything. News about a father she barely remembered. News about a secret that would make her the most powerful woman in Chicago. And news that would turn her from the betrayed wife into the woman who would destroy them all. The security guards walked Scarlett through the lobby like she was a criminal. Marcus, the security guard, looked confused. Mrs. Morrison? Everything okay? She wanted to answer him. She wanted to say that no, everything was not okay. That her whole life had just exploded. But her throat felt like sandpaper. I'm fine, Marcus. Just fine. But she wasn't fine. As she stood on the sidewalk holding her pathetic cardboard box, watching people in expensive suits rush past her like she didn't exist, Scarlett realized something terrible. She had nothing. Her job was gone. Her marriage was over. Her best friend had stabbed her in the back. She lived in an apartment that she couldn't afford without her salary. Her car payment was due next week. Have you ever stood in the middle of a busy street and felt completely invisible? Like the world was moving around you, but you were frozen in place? Scarlett sat down on a bench across from the Morrison Creative Agency building. She stared up at the 15th floor at Brendan's corner office. The blinds were open now. She could see 2 figures moving around inside. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jessa. I'm sorry it had to happen this way, but Brendan and I are in love. Real love. You'll understand someday. Real love. Scarlett deleted the message. Then she blocked Jess's number. Then she blocked Brendan's number. A businessman sat down next to her on the bench. He was probably in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes. Rough day? He asked. Scarlett laughed bitterly. You could say that. I've been where you are, he said quietly. Lost everything. Job, wife, house. Felt like the world was ending. What did you do? I rebuilt. From nothing. It took time, but I rebuilt. He stood up. Whatever happened up there, it's not the end of your story. It's just the end of that chapter. He walked away before she could ask his name. Do you know someone who's been kicked when they were down? Someone who lost everything and had to start over? Scarlett's phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Is this Scarlett Morrison? Yes. Ma'am, this is Detective Rodriguez with the Chicago Police Department. I'm calling about your father. Her father? Scarlett's chest tightened. She hadn't spoken to her father in over 10 years. Marcus Morrison, no relation to the agency, just another cruel cosmic joke, had walked out on her and her mom when Scarlett was 18. Last she heard, he lived somewhere in Colorado. What about my father? Ma'am, I'm sorry to inform you that your father passed away yesterday evening. He was found in his home in Aspen. Natural causes, appears to be a heart attack. The words felt surreal. I'm sorry, what? Your father, Marcus Morrison. He's deceased. You're listed as his next of kin. Scarlett stared at the building across the street, at her husband's office, at the life that had just exploded. Mom, are you there? Yes, I'm here. I hadn't spoken to my father in years. Understand. We'll need you to come to Colorado to handle his affairs. There's also a lawyer here who needs to speak with you. Says it's urgent. A lawyer. Her deadbeat father had a lawyer. What kind of affairs? Ma'am, I think it's best if you speak with the attorney. His name is Robert Chun. He says your father left specific instructions about contacting you immediately upon his death. Specific instructions. Her father who disappeared when she needed him most. Who never called on birthdays or holidays. Who never met Brendan. Who didn't even know she was married. I'll need to make arrangements to come out there. Mr. Chin said he'd cover all your travel expenses. He's very eager to meet with you. Travel expenses. Her father's lawyer was paying for her travel. Have you ever gotten news that completely flipped your world upside down? News that made you question everything you thought you knew? Scarlett hung up the phone. She sat on that bench for another hour, watching people go in and out of the building where she used to work, where her husband was probably celebrating with her ex-best friend. At 3 p.m., she saw them leave together. Brendan's hand on Jess's lower back. They got into his BMW, the one Scarlett helped him pick out last year. They drove away without looking in her direction. She called a cab to take her to the apartment she shared with Brendan. The apartment she couldn't afford. The apartment filled with pictures of their fake happy life. But as she packed her suitcase for Colorado, Scarlett had no idea that her father's mysterious lawyer was waiting to tell her something that would change everything. Something about an inheritance that would make her richer than Brendan ever dreamed of being. Something that would give her the power to destroy every person who had hurt her. The power to make them all pay. The plane to Aspen was small and bumpy. Scarlett had never flown first class before, but Robert Chun had insisted. She sat in the leather seat, drinking champagne she didn't want, trying to process the last 24 hours. Yesterday morning, she was a married woman with a job and a best friend. Now she was flying to Colorado for her estranged father's funeral, wondering how she was going to pay rent next month. Have you ever felt like life was playing some cosmic joke on you? Like someone was pulling strings behind the scenes, moving you around like a chess piece? The lawyer met her at the Aspen airport. Robert Chun was not what she expected. He was young, maybe 35, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Scarlett made in a month. His black hair was perfectly styled, and he drove a Mercedes that looked like it belonged in a movie. "Miss Morrison, I'm so sorry for your loss." "Thank you. Though I should tell you, I barely knew my father." Robert's expression was unreadable. Yes, he mentioned that. He had many regrets about that. They drove through Aspen in silence. Scarlett had never been to Colorado before. She'd never been anywhere, really. Brendan always said they couldn't afford vacations. But looking at the mountains and the expensive houses, she wondered what kind of life her father had been living. "Mr. Chun, can I ask you something?" "Of course. How can my father afford a lawyer like you?" "Last I knew, he was working construction in Denver." Robert glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "Your father was a very successful man, Miss Morrison. Very successful." They pulled up to a house that made Scarlett's jaw drop. It wasn't just a house. It was a mansion, glass and stone and wood, built into the mountainside like something from a magazine. The driveway was lined with aspen trees that gave the property its name. This is where he lived? This is one of the properties he owned. One of the properties. Robert led her through the front door. The inside was even more impressive than the outside. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out at snow-capped mountains. The furniture looked expensive but comfortable. There were bookshelves everywhere, filled with books on business and real estate. And there were pictures. Pictures of Scarlett. Her high school graduation. Her college graduation. Her wedding to Brendan. Pictures she had no idea her father had. Do you know what it feels like to discover that someone was watching your life from a distance? Someone who cared but never showed it? "He kept track of you," Robert said quietly. "He hired private investigators to make sure you were safe and happy. He knew about your job, your marriage, everything." Scarlett touched one of the pictures. It was from her wedding day. She looked so happy. Brendan looked so loving. It was all a lie, but her father wouldn't have known that. Why didn't he ever contact me? He felt he'd lost the right. He said he'd made too many mistakes when you were young. He thought you were better off without him. That wasn't his choice to make. No, it wasn't. And he knew that. It's why he made sure you'd be taken care of. Robert handed her a thick envelope. "Your father's will." Scarlett sat down on a leather couch that probably cost more than her car. She opened the envelope with shaking hands. The first page was a letter, written in her father's handwriting. She recognized it from birthday cards he used to sign when she was little. "My dear Scarlett," it began, "if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I never found the courage to make things right between us. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I missed too many important moments. But I never stopped loving you, and I never stopped trying to make sure you'd be okay." Tears were falling on the paper. Scarlett didn't try to stop them. "I built something, sweetheart. I built an empire, and it's all yours now. Every building, every investment, every penny. Use it to build the life you deserve. Use it to be happy. And maybe, if you can find it in your heart, forgive a foolish old man who loved you more than life itself." She looked up at Robert. "What empire?" Robert opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. "Your father owned 47 properties across Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming. He had investments in tech companies, real estate developments, and renewable energy. His net worth at the time of his death was approximately $53 million. The words didn't compute. $53 million. $2. And it's all yours. Scarlett stared at the documents. Property deeds, investment portfolios, bank statements with numbers that didn't look real. Have you ever had your entire reality shift in a single moment? Have you ever gone from having nothing to having everything? There's more, Robert said. Your father also left detailed instructions about his funeral. He didn't want a service. He wanted to be cremated. But he did want me to give you this. He handed her a small wooden box. Inside was a simple gold necklace with a heart-shaped pendant. It looked old and worn. He said it belonged to your grandmother. He'd been saving it for you. Scarlett put on the necklace. It felt warm against her skin. So what happens now? She asked. Now you decide what you want to do with $53 million and a real estate empire. Scarlett thought about Brendan, about Jessa, about being fired and humiliated and thrown away like garbage. She thought about dead weight. I want to go back to Chicago, she said quietly. Of course. We can arrange. No, she interrupted. I want to buy a house in Chicago. A big house. I want to transfer the business operations there. And I want to do it quietly. Robert smiled. I like the way you think. How quietly? Nobody can know who I am or what I'm worth. Not yet. May I ask why? Scarlett touched the necklace her father had left her. Because I have some people to visit. Some people who need to learn that dead weight can become a wrecking ball. She had no idea that at that very moment, 3 time zones away, Brendan was going through her things in their apartment, looking for something valuable he could sell, looking for any trace of money or assets he could claim in their divorce. He was about to get the surprise of his life. 3 days later, Scarlett was back in Chicago, but she wasn't the same woman who had left. She stood in the lobby of the Four Seasons Hotel, wearing a black dress that cost more than her old monthly salary. Her hair was styled. Her nails were done. She looked like money. But more importantly, she felt like power. Robert Chun had flown back with her. They'd spent the flight planning her new life. New bank accounts. New investments. A new identity as an heiress who preferred privacy. The house you wanted is available, Robert told her as they sat in the hotel restaurant. The seller accepted your cash offer. Full asking price. No inspection. Close in 10 days. How much? $4.7 million. It's in Lincoln Park. 6 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, rooftop deck with city views. $4.7 million. A month ago, Scarlett clipped coupons to afford groceries. And the business transfers? Morrison Holdings will be headquartered in Chicago by the end of the month. I've already hired a local staff. They think you're Marcus Morrison's daughter who's been living abroad. They don't know about your previous life here. Perfect. Nobody would connect successful businesswoman Scarlett Morrison with a woman who got fired and humiliated. Have you ever wanted to completely reinvent yourself? To become the person you always knew you could be if you just had the chance? There's something else, Robert said, sliding a manila envelope across the table. My investigators found some interesting information about your husband. Ex-husband. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. You might want to wait on that. Scarlett opened the envelope. Inside were bank statements, financial records, and what looked like legal documents. What am I looking at? Brendan Morrison has been embezzling money from client accounts for the past 18 months. Small amounts at first, but it's escalated. He's stolen approximately $200,000. Scarlett stared at the numbers. How did you find this? Your father was thorough about protecting you. He had investigators watching Brendan for over a year. They were preparing to approach you about his criminal activity when your father passed away. Her father had been trying to protect her. Even from a distance, even after years of silence, he'd been watching out for her. There's more. Brendan's been using company funds to pay for his affair with Jessa. Hotel rooms, dinners, jewelry, all charged to Morrison Creative Agency's business accounts. Does he know you know? He has no idea. And there's something else. Something bigger. Robert pulled out another document. Brendan's been planning to file for divorce and claim half of whatever assets you inherited from your father. He had you followed to Colorado. He knows about the will. Scarlett's blood ran cold. He knows about the money. He knows you inherited something. He doesn't know how much. But he's planning to take you to court and claim that since you were married when your father died, he's entitled to half of everything. The audacity, the sheer, breathtaking audacity. Do you know someone who's so greedy they'll try to steal money from a grieving daughter? Someone who has no shame, no limits to how low they'll sink? What can we do? Robert smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. We could do a lot. But first, I need to know how far you're willing to go. Scarlett thought about being escorted out of the office by security. About 43 co-workers watching her humiliation. About Brendan calling her dead weight. As far as it takes. Good, because I have a plan that will destroy him completely. But it requires patience. And it requires you to let him make the first move. What kind of move? He's going to serve you divorce papers. Probably in the next few days. He's going to demand half of your inheritance, temporary alimony, and half of any property you've acquired since your father's death. And then we show him what happens when you try to steal from someone who can buy and sell you 100 times over. That evening, Scarlett sat in her hotel suite, looking out at the Chicago skyline. Somewhere out there, Brendan and Jessa were probably planning their future together, planning how to spend her money. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. Scarlett? It's Mark from Morrison Creative. Look, I know what happened wasn't right. A lot of us are pretty upset about how Brendan handled things. Mark was one of the senior designers. A good guy who'd always been kind to her. Thanks, Mark. That means a lot. Listen, I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but Brendan's been acting really weird since you left. He's been going through old employee files, asking questions about your family, your background. It's like he's investigating you. Because he was investigating her. I appreciate the heads up. There's something else. He fired 3 people today. No reason. Just said the company was restructuring. But Scarlett, he hired Jessa as the new marketing director at twice your old salary. Of course he did. Mark, can I ask you something? Hypothetically, if someone wanted to buy Morrison Creative Agency, how would they go about it? Hypothetically, they need a lot of cash. Brendan owns 60%. His business partner owns 40%. But his partner's been trying to sell his shares for months. Brendan can't afford to buy him out. How much would 40% cost? Maybe 800,000? Million at most? What? Just curious. Thanks for the call, Mark. After she hung up, Scarlett called Robert. I want to buy Morrison Creative Agency. The whole company. 40% to start. Enough to be Brendan's business partner. I'll make some calls. Scarlett walked to the window. The city lights sparkled below her like diamonds. Tomorrow, Brendan would probably serve her with divorce papers. He'd demand half of everything she'd inherited. He had no idea that by the end of the week, she'd own half of his company. He had no idea that his deadweight was about to become his boss. But what Scarlett didn't know was that Brendan had more secrets than embezzlement and affairs. Darker secrets. Dangerous secrets that would put her life at risk. The divorce papers arrived on Thursday morning, hand-delivered to her hotel suite by a process server who looked embarrassed to be there. Scarlett read through the documents while drinking her morning coffee. Brendan wasn't just asking for half her inheritance. He was claiming she'd been mentally and emotionally abusive during their marriage. He was demanding the apartment, the furniture, her car, and $10,000 a month in temporary support. The man who had cheated on her for 2 years was claiming she was abusive. The man who had stolen from his clients was demanding her money. The man who had fired her and humiliated her was asking for spousal support. Have you ever been so angry that you actually felt calm? Like you'd moved beyond rage into something colder and more dangerous? Scarlett called Robert. Did you see the papers? I'm looking at them now. He's claiming you hid assets from him during the marriage and that you have a history of financial deception. Financial deception. It gets worse. He's filed a motion for emergency spousal support. He claims he can't maintain his lifestyle without your financial contribution. Scarlett laughed. Actually laughed. His lifestyle? The lifestyle I paid for while he was stealing money and sleeping with my best friend. There's something else. He's hired a very expensive attorney. Richard Blackstone. Scarlett had heard of Blackstone. He was Chicago's most ruthless divorce lawyer. He specialized in destroying wives and taking everything they had. How's Brendan paying for Blackstone? Good question. Blackstone charges $500 an hour. Brendan doesn't have that kind of money. Unless someone's paying for it. Who would pay for Brendan's divorce attorney? Scarlett thought about it. Someone who stands to benefit from him getting half my money. Jessa. Jessa doesn't have money either, but her family does. Robert was quiet for a moment. I'll look into the Hendricks family finances. Hendricks, Jessa's maiden name. Her father owned a chain of car dealerships across the Midwest. Her mother came from old Chicago money. They're funding this, Scarlett said. They're all in it together. Do you know what it feels like to realize that your betrayal wasn't just personal, that it was planned and calculated by multiple people who saw you as a target? Robert, I need you to do something for me. Anything. I want to accelerate our timeline. How fast can you buy that 40% of Morrison Creative? If we pay cash, 24 hours. Do it. And I want to schedule a meeting with Brendan for Monday morning. Tell him I'm ready to negotiate. What are you planning? I'm planning to give him exactly what he deserves. That afternoon, Scarlett went shopping. Not for clothes or jewelry, but for information. She hired a private security firm to investigate Jess's family. She hired a forensic accountant to dig deeper into Brendan's embezzlement. She hired the best divorce attorney in Chicago, someone even more expensive and ruthless than Richard Blackstone. By Friday evening, she owned 40% of Morrison Creative Agency. Brendan had no idea. The sale went through a shell company Robert had created. As far as anyone knew, a mysterious investor had bought out Brendan's business partner. On Saturday morning, Scarlett got a call from her new private investigator. Miss Morrison, you need to hear this. What did you find? Jessa Hendricks has been married for 6 months. Scarlett almost dropped the phone. Married to who? Not Brendan. A guy named David Walsh. Real estate developer. Very wealthy. They had a small ceremony in Vegas. But here's the interesting part. She's been using her maiden name, and her husband doesn't know about her affair with your husband. Jessa was married. She was cheating on her husband with Brendan, who was cheating on Scarlett with her. There's more, the investigator continued. David Walsh is currently in Europe on business. He has no idea his wife is living with another man. And get this, David Walsh just signed a $50 million development deal. Jess is after his money. Looks that way. She's playing both men. But she made one mistake. What's that? She forged David's signature on several financial documents. If David finds out, she could go to prison for fraud. Scarlett smiled for the first time in days. Can you prove the forgery? Already have. Handwriting analysis, document forensics, the works. Have you ever felt puzzle pieces clicking into place? Have you ever realized that the people who hurt you aren't as smart as they think they are? I need you to do one more thing. I need you to find David Walsh in Europe and arrange a meeting. Don't tell him why. Just tell him it's about his wife and it's urgent. Consider it done. Sunday night, Scarlett sat in her hotel room, preparing for Monday's meeting with Brendan. She'd moved out of the Four Seasons and into the penthouse at the Ritz-Carlton. The suite cost $3,000 a night and had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Tomorrow, she would walk in a Morrison Creative Agency, not as the fired employee, but as the new co-owner. Tomorrow, she would sit across from Brendan and watch his face when he realized what she'd become. Tomorrow, she would begin the systematic destruction of everyone who had betrayed her. But first, she had one more call to make. David Walsh? This is Scarlett Morrison. I think we need to talk about your wife. Picture this. You're hunting down the man who destroyed your life, and every clue you find makes you realize he's even worse than you thought. That's exactly where Scarlett found herself, sitting in a cramped detective agency office that smelled like old coffee and determination. Marcus Riley, the private investigator she'd hired, spread photos across his desk like he was dealing cards. Your husband's been busy, he said, pointing to bank statements and wire transfers. Real busy. Scarlett leaned forward, her heart pounding. The numbers didn't lie. Brendan had been moving money around for 3 years, taking chunks from client accounts and hiding them in offshore accounts. Not just a few thousand here and there. We're talking about $2 million. He's been stealing from people who trusted him, she whispered. Her voice cracked, but not from sadness anymore. From pure rage. Marcus nodded grimly. Retirement funds, college savings, business loans. He cleaned out a widow's entire life savings just last month. He slid over a photo of an elderly woman, Mrs. Patterson, 83 years old. She trusted him with her late husband's pension money. The room felt like it was spinning. Scarlett gripped the edge of the desk until her knuckles turned white. How had she been married to this monster for 5 years and never seen it? How had she shared a bed with someone who could steal from grandmothers? There's more, Marcus continued, pulling out another folder. Your father's business associates have been asking questions. They want to help you take him down. For the first time in weeks, Scarlett felt something other than betrayal. She felt powerful, like she was building an army of people who believed in justice. Her father might have been absent from her childhood, but his friends were stepping up now, treating her like family. She spent the next hour going through every piece of evidence, memorizing dates and amounts. Each stolen dollar felt personal now. Each victim's face burned into her memory. But as she walked back to her car that evening, her phone buzzed with a text that made her blood freeze. From Brendan. I know what you're up to. You think you're so smart with your little investigation. But I've got something that'll blow your mind, wife. Attached was a single photo that made her drop her phone on the sidewalk. It was a picture of her signing papers at the lawyer's office, but someone had been watching her. Someone had been following her every move. And written across the bottom in red ink, you were never supposed to get that inheritance. Sometimes the universe sends you exactly what you need when you need it most. For Scarlett, that person was William Chun, her father's former business partner and the closest thing to family she had left. His office overlooked the city skyline, all glass and steel, but William himself was warm as hot chocolate on a winter day. At 65, he had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the patience to explain things Scarlett never knew she needed to understand. Your father talked about you every single day, William said, pouring tea into delicate china cups. He kept every school photo, every report card, every newspaper clipping from your college graduation. Scarlett's chest tightened. Then why didn't he ever call? Why didn't he try to be part of my life? William sighed deeply, setting down his cup, because he was terrified he'd mess you up the way his own father messed him up. Your grandfather was a cruel man, Scarlett. Beat your dad senseless every time business got tough. Marcus swore he'd rather love you from a distance than risk hurting you up close. The words hit like a punch to the stomach. All those years of feeling abandoned, and her father had been protecting her in the only way he knew how. He built this empire for you, William continued, gesturing toward the city below. Every deal, every investment, every late night at the office. He used to say, one day my little girl's going to need this, and I'm going to make sure she's set for life. Tears rolled down Scarlett's cheeks, but they weren't sad tears anymore. They were the kind that wash away old hurt and make room for understanding. William leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. Your father was brilliant at business because he never let emotions cloud his judgment. He taught me that revenge is a dish best served with strategy, not anger. They spent the afternoon going over her father's business philosophy. Treat people fairly, but never let anyone take advantage of you. Build wealth to help others, not just yourself. And most importantly, always have a backup plan. Brendan thinks he's playing chess, William said with a slight smile. But you, my dear, are about to show him what it feels like to play against a grandmaster. Just as Scarlett was feeling hopeful for the first time in weeks, her phone exploded with notifications. Text after text from unknown numbers, all with the same message. Photos of her at restaurants, at the lawyer's office, at the detective agency. The final message made her hand shake. Stop digging or you'll end up like your father. Accidents happen. Fear has a way of making you feel small, but anger can make you feel invincible. Scarlett was done being small. The restraining order was just paper, but the 2 bodyguards William insisted on hiring were very real. Jake and Tommy looked like they could bench press a small car, and they followed her everywhere with the quiet efficiency of professional protection. This is crazy, Scarlett muttered, watching Jake check her car for bombs before she could drive to the grocery store. I'm living like some kind of witness protection person. But crazy was exactly what her life had become. Brendan wasn't just stealing money anymore. He was unraveling. His law firm colleagues were starting to ask questions about missing client funds. His fancy lifestyle was built on lies that were crumbling fast. The The phone call started at 3 in the morning. Heavy breathing, then silence. Sometimes he'd whisper things that made her skin crawl. You belong to me. You can't hide forever. That money should be mine. Scarlett changed her locks, installed security cameras, and moved into a hotel suite under a fake name. But even surrounded by bodyguards and bulletproof glass, she felt like prey being hunted by a predator who knew her every move. During the day, she threw herself into learning her father's business empire. Real estate holdings across 12 states, investment portfolios that made her head spin, charitable foundations that had helped thousands of families. Your father was worth more than money, William explained during one of their daily strategy meetings. He was worth respect. That's what Brendan's really after, the power that comes with your family name. Scarlett was reviewing contracts in her hotel room when Jake knocked urgently on the door. Ma'am, you need to see this. On his phone was a video message from Jessa, her former best friend who'd betrayed her with Brendan. But Jessa looked terrible. Mascara streaked down her face. Her usually perfect hair was a mess, and her hands were shaking. Scarlett, I know you hate me, but you need to listen. Brendan's lost his mind. He's been planning something terrible since the day you inherited that money. He never loved me. He was just using me to get information about you. The video shook as Jessa looked over her shoulder nervously. He's been tracking your phone, following you, taking pictures. But that's not the worst part. He's been telling people you're mentally unstable, that you're dangerous, that someone needs to stop you before you hurt yourself. Scarlett's blood turned to ice. He's going to stage something, Scarlett. An accident or something worse. He keeps saying dead wives can't inherit money, but widows can. You have to get somewhere safe. You have to. The video cut off abruptly, leaving Scarlett staring at a black screen that reflected her terrified face. Forgiveness is the last thing you expect to feel toward the person who helped destroy your life. But sometimes people surprise you in ways that change everything. Jessa showed up at Scarlett's hotel at dawn, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her designer clothes were wrinkled, her perfect manicure was chipped, and her eyes were red from crying. I know you don't want to see me, she said through the door, but I have information that could save your life. Against Jake's advice, Scarlett let her in. The woman sitting across from her wasn't the confident, backstabbing friend she'd known. This was someone who looked broken, scared, and genuinely sorry. He's been manipulating me for months, Jessa began, her voice barely above a whisper. Started way before you caught us together. He'd call me crying, saying you were being cruel to him, that you were planning to leave him with nothing. He made me feel like I was rescuing him. Scarlett's anger was still there, but underneath it was something she didn't expect, pity. Jessa had been played just as hard as she had. He showed me fake text messages from you, Jessa continued. Messages where you supposedly said terrible things about me, about how stupid I was, how you only kept me around for entertainment. I believe him because I was jealous of you. Your perfect marriage, your job, your confidence. I wanted what you had. The confession hung in the air between them like a bridge neither was sure they could cross. I found out the truth when I overheard him on the phone with someone, Jessa said, pulling out her phone. He was bragging about how easy it was to turn us against each other, how he planned the whole thing to isolate you before he struck. She played a recording that made Scarlett's hands clench into fists. Brendan's voice, cold and calculating. Women are so predictable. Make them insecure, pit them against each other, and they'll do your dirty work for free. Scarlett never saw it coming. But the recording got worse. Much worse. The inheritance thing was perfect timing, Brendan continued. Now I just need to get rid of her permanently and claim everything as the grieving widower. Nobody questions a man who loses his wife tragically. Scarlett and Jessa stared at each other, the weight of his words settling between them like poison. We have to take him down, Jessa said firmly. But we have to be smarter than him. For the first time in months, Scarlett felt like she had a real ally. Someone who understood exactly how dangerous and manipulative Brendan could be. They spent the morning planning, sharing information, building a case that would destroy him completely. But at noon, Jake burst through the door with news that changed everything. FBI just raided his office, he announced, grinning like Christmas morning. Took everything, computers, files, even his coffee mug. Someone tipped them off about the missing client funds. Through the hotel window, they could see news vans surrounding Brendan's law firm building. His carefully constructed life was falling apart in real time, broadcast live on every local channel. But as they watched, Scarlett's phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. Victory tastes sweeter when it's served with a side of poetic justice. And Scarlett was about to feast. The voice on the phone belonged to Agent Sarah Martinez from the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. "Mrs. Morrison, we need to talk. We've been building a case against your husband for 6 months, and your evidence just gave us everything we needed to put him away for a very long time." 24 hours later, Scarlett sat in a conference room watching federal agents lay out Brendan's crimes like pieces of a puzzle. Wire fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, and conspiracy. The man she'd shared a bed with for 5 years was looking at 30 years in federal prison. He stole from 47 different clients, Agent Martinez explained. Retirement funds, children's college savings, business loans. We're talking about $8 million in total theft. But the best part was yet to come. Using her inheritance money and William's business connections, Scarlett had quietly been buying up the debt on Brendan's law firm. Every loan, every line of credit, every outstanding bill. While he was stealing from clients, she was becoming his biggest creditor. "Congratulations," William said, sliding a folder across his desk. "You now own Morrison and Associates law firm. Building business, client list, everything." The irony was delicious. Brendan had fired her from a job she now owned completely. Scarlett's first act as the new owner was to freeze all of Brendan's assets and accounts. His fancy car, his expensive suits, his country club membership, gone. She liquidated everything to create a victim restitution fund, making sure every stolen penny went back to the families he'd robbed. Mrs. Patterson, the 83-year-old widow, wept when Scarlett personally delivered a check for her full retirement savings plus interest. "You're an angel," she whispered, patting Scarlett's hand with fingers gnarled by arthritis. But the sweetest moment came when Scarlett walked into the law firm, her law firm, for the first time as owner. The same reception desk where she'd been humiliated and fired was now hers. The corner office where she'd caught Brendan with Jessa was being redecorated as her new headquarters. The staff looked nervous, waiting to see if she'd fire everyone out of revenge. Instead, she gave them all raises and profit-sharing bonuses. "You're not responsible for your former boss's crimes," she announced, "but you're responsible for helping me rebuild this firm's reputation." By evening, the local news was running the story. "Local woman inherits fortune, takes down crooked husband." The reporter painted her as a modern-day Robin Hood, stealing from the thief to give back to his victims. Scarlett was reviewing financial statements in her new office when Jake knocked on the door. "Ma'am, there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent." Standing in her reception area was a man she'd never seen before, wearing an expensive suit and looking nervous as hell. "Mrs. Morrison," he said, extending his hand. "I'm David Walsh, Brendan's defense attorney. I'm here to discuss a plea deal." Scarlett smiled sweetly. "I'm listening. My client is willing to plead guilty to all charges in exchange for you dropping the civil lawsuits against him. He'll serve his time quietly, and you keep everything you've already taken." The audacity was breathtaking. Even from behind bars, Brendan was trying to negotiate like he had something she wanted. "Counteroffer," Scarlett said, her voice honey-sweet but steel-hard. "He pleads guilty, serves his full sentence, and signs over any remaining rights to anything he's ever touched. In return, I won't press charges for the death threats." David Walsh went pale. "Death threats?" Scarlett pulled out her phone and played the voicemails Brendan had left. His voice, slurred with alcohol and rage, promising to make her pay and end this once and for all. But as she was savoring her triumph, Jake's radio crackled with urgent chatter that made everyone in the room freeze. "All units, we have a prison transport vehicle stopped on Highway 94. Prisoner is missing. Consider extremely dangerous. Subject is Brendan Morrison, wanted for escape, and considered armed and desperate. Nothing prepares you for the moment when you have to face your worst nightmare in an orange jumpsuit. But there Scarlett sat, separated from Brendan by bulletproof glass, watching the man who once promised to love her forever now looking at her like she was his sworn enemy. Prison had not been kind to him. His perfectly styled hair was greasy and unkempt. His designer stubble had become a scraggly beard. But his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, were exactly the same. "You destroyed my life," he said through the prison phone, his voice flat and emotionless. Scarlett almost laughed. "I destroyed your life? You stole $8 million from innocent people. You threatened to kill me. You manipulated everyone around you like we were chess pieces. I gave you everything," Brendan continued, ignoring her words completely. "A beautiful home, expensive clothes, a job, my firm. And this is how you repay me? By turning everyone against me?" The delusion was breathtaking. Even sitting in federal prison, wearing handcuffs and facing 30 years behind bars, he still believed he was the victim in this story. "I loved you," Scarlett said quietly. "For 5 years, I believed in us. I defended you to my friends when they said you were controlling. I made excuses when you put me down in public. I thought love was supposed to hurt sometimes." For just a moment, his mask slipped. She saw something that might have been regret flicker across his face. "We could have been happy," he whispered, "if you hadn't been so stubborn about that inheritance money. If you had just shared it with me like a good wife should." "A good wife?" Scarlett's voice rose. "A good wife would have let you steal from widows and orphans? A good wife would have looked the other way while you committed felonies." The conversation was going nowhere. Brendan lived in a fantasy world where everyone else was wrong and he was just misunderstood. But Scarlett had come here for closure, and she was going to get it. "I'm divorcing you," she said simply. "The papers are already filed. You'll have nothing left of me when you get out of here." That's when he smiled. That cold, cruel smile that used to make her stomach turn. "You think you've won, don't you?" He leaned closer to the glass. "You think your little revenge story has a happy ending?" Scarlett's blood went cold. "I have one last surprise for you, wife. Something that's going to change everything you think you know about your precious father and that inheritance money." He hung up the phone and walked away, leaving Scarlett staring at her reflection in the empty glass, wondering what bomb he was about to drop on her life. The answer came 3 days later in the form of a medical report that made her hands shake as she read it. Sometimes life throws you a curveball when you're already struggling to stay in the game. For Scarlett, that curveball came in the form of 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test. She stared at those lines for 20 minutes, sitting on the bathroom floor of her hotel room, trying to process what this meant. A baby, Brennan's baby, growing inside her while he sat in federal prison planning God knows what kind of final revenge. The timing couldn't have been worse. She was finally free, finally in control of her life, finally building something meaningful with her father's legacy. And now this. "Are you okay in there?" Jessica called through the bathroom door. Over the past few weeks, their friendship had slowly rebuilt itself on a foundation of shared trauma and mutual forgiveness. Scarlett opened the door and held up the test without saying a word. Jess's face went through every emotion possible in about 5 seconds. Shock, concern, anger, and finally determination. "What do you want to do?" That was the question, wasn't it? What did she want to do? Over the next few days, Scarlett found herself surrounded by an unlikely support network. William Chin offered to help in any way possible, reminding her that she had enough money to raise 10 children comfortably. Jessa moved into the hotel suite to provide emotional support. Even Jake and Tommy, her bodyguards, went out of their way to make sure she was eating properly and getting enough rest. "Your father would have been thrilled to have a grandchild," Williams said during one of their daily tea sessions. "He always regretted missing out on watching you grow up. This would have been his chance to do better." The idea of her baby having a loving grandfather figure in William made her heart warm. But every time she thought about the future, Brendan's threatening smile haunted her thoughts. What had he meant about her father and the inheritance? What surprise was he planning? She was researching prenatal vitamins online when her phone rang. The caller ID showed Brendan's defense attorney, David Walsh. "Mrs. Morrison, we have a problem. My client has escaped federal custody during a routine prison transport. The FBI believes he may be heading your way." The hotel room suddenly felt like a glass cage. Scarlett looked out the window at the busy street below, wondering if Brendan was already out there somewhere, watching and waiting. "How long ago?" she asked, her free hand instinctively moving to her still flat stomach. 6 hours. They found a transport van abandoned near the Canadian border, but there's no trace of him. "Mrs. Morrison, I have to ask, is there anywhere he might go? Any place that would have special meaning to him?" Scarlett's mind raced through 5 years of marriage, trying to think like someone who was desperate and dangerous. Where would Brendan go when he had nothing left to lose? The answer hit her like a lightning bolt. Their old house. The place where this nightmare had started. The place where he'd probably hidden evidence of his crimes. But as she was about to share this information with the lawyer, Jake burst through the door with news that made her blood freeze. "Ma'am, hotel security just called. Someone matching his description was seen in the parking garage 20 minutes ago." Fear has a way of sharpening your mind when everything you love is on the line. And for Scarlett, everything suddenly included the tiny life growing inside her. The hotel evacuation happened fast. Jake and Tommy moved her through service corridors and emergency exits like they were escaping a war zone. But even surrounded by FBI agents and police officers, Scarlett felt exposed and vulnerable. "He knows this area," she told Agent Martinez as they loaded her into an armored SUV. "He knows where I shop, where I eat, where I go to think. He's been tracking me for months." They drove to a safe house 20 miles outside the city, a nondescript ranch home surrounded by tall fences and security cameras. But Scarlett couldn't shake the feeling that nowhere was truly safe from someone who had nothing left to lose. The waiting was the worst part. FBI agents came and went with updates that never seemed to lead anywhere. Brendan had vanished like smoke, leaving behind only fear and uncertainty. On the second day, Jessa was pacing the living room like a caged animal when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message was simple but chilling. "Tell Scarlett I want to talk. Just her and me. Like old times." Attached was a photo of the house where they'd lived together for 3 years. Their old bedroom window was circled in red. "He's lost his mind," Jessa whispered, showing the message to Agent Martinez. "He actually thinks she's going to meet him alone." But Scarlett was already formulating a plan. "What if I do?" Every person in that room started talking at once, all of them explaining why that was the stupidest idea in human history. But Scarlett held up her hand for silence. "He's not going to stop," she said calmly. "He'll keep coming after me forever unless we end this. But I won't go alone, and I won't go unprotected." The plan they came up with was risky, but solid. Scarlett would wear a wire and a GPS tracker. FBI agents would surround the house. Snipers would be positioned on neighboring rooftops. She would go in, get him talking, and let the professionals handle the rest. At sunset, Scarlett stood in the driveway of the house that had once been her home, looking up at windows that now seemed foreign and threatening. The key still worked, which somehow made everything worse. Inside, the furniture was covered in dust sheets like ghosts from her old life. But sitting in the living room, calm as you please, was Brendan. He'd shaved and cleaned himself up, almost looking like the man she'd once loved. "I've been waiting for you," he said without turning around. "We need to finish our conversation." Scarlett's hand moved protectively to her stomach. "What conversation?" "The one where you threatened to kill me." He finally turned, and his eyes were completely empty. Not angry, not sad, just nothing. "The one where I tell you the truth about your precious daddy." He pulled out a manila folder and set on the coffee table between them. "Marcus Morrison wasn't the saint you think he was. He stole that money from my family 20 years ago. My father's construction company, my college fund, my mother's medical bills, all gone because your father cheated him in a business deal." Scarlett's world tilted sideways. "You're lying. I have the contracts right here. The court documents from the lawsuit my father tried to file. Your daddy destroyed my family, and then he got rich off our suffering." But even as he was talking, Scarlett noticed his hands were shaking. His story didn't add up. If this were true, why hadn't he told her years ago? Why wait until now? You married me for revenge, she realized aloud. Brendan's empty smile confirmed her worst fears. I spent 15 years planning how to get back what your family owed mine. Marrying you was supposed to be the perfect payback. The wire under her shirt felt hot against her skin. The FBI agents outside would have heard everything by now. But Brendan wasn't done talking. Then you had to go and inherit everything before I could take it properly. So I had to improvise. That's when Scarlett saw the gun in his other hand. Hope has a funny way of blooming in the darkest moments, sometimes in ways you never expect. And for Scarlett, hope came in the form of red laser dots dancing across Brendan's chest. The FBI hadn't waited for her signal. The moment they saw the weapon, snipers had him in their crosshairs through the living room windows. "Put the gun down, Brendan." Agent Martinez's voice crackled through a bullhorn outside. "You're surrounded. There's nowhere to go." But Brendan just laughed, a sound that sent chills down Scarlett's spine. "They won't shoot. Not with you so close. Not with my baby inside you." How did he know about the pregnancy? Had someone leaked that information? Or had he been watching her even more closely than she'd realized? "This isn't about revenge anymore," she said quietly, trying to keep her voice steady. "This is about sickness. You need help. I need justice." He screamed, and for the first time, she saw the real madness in his eyes. "Your family destroyed mine, and I'm going to destroy yours." The gun was pointed at her stomach now, and Scarlett realized with crystal clarity that this man she'd once loved was prepared to kill not just her, but their unborn child, to satisfy some twisted need for revenge. But crazy people make mistakes, and Brendan's mistake was thinking Scarlett was still the weak, dependent woman he'd married 5 years ago. When he turned slightly to yell something else at the FBI agents outside, Scarlett grabbed the heavy crystal vase from the coffee table and smashed it across his wrist. The gun went flying, and suddenly the house exploded with activity. FBI agents crashed through windows and doors like an action movie. Brendan was on the ground in handcuffs before he could even cry out in pain. And Scarlett was being checked over by paramedics who confirmed what she already knew: the baby was fine. 3 months later, Scarlett stood in the ballroom of the city's fanciest hotel, surrounded by people whose lives had been changed by her father's charitable foundation. Tonight was the annual fundraising gala, and they'd raised over $2 million for families affected by financial crimes. Mrs. Patterson, the elderly widow Brendan had robbed, was now the foundation's volunteer coordinator. "You gave me back more than money," she told Scarlett during the cocktail hour. "You gave me back my faith in people." Jessa had started a support group for women who'd been manipulated by financial predators. William Chun was teaching Scarlett everything about running a business empire with integrity. And Jake and Tommy had become permanent fixtures in her life, more like protective big brothers than hired security. But the most important moment of the evening came when Scarlett felt the first flutter of movement in her belly. Strong and determined, just like she'd learned to be. As she was savoring that private moment of connection with her unborn child, a hotel employee approached with an envelope. "This came for you earlier, ma'am." The return address was from the federal penitentiary where Brendan was now serving a life sentence. Her first instinct was to throw it away, but curiosity won. 5 years later, Scarlett stood in the boardroom of Morrison Enterprises, looking out at the city skyline that had once seemed so intimidating. Now it felt like home. Her daughter Emma was at her feet, coloring in a book about brave princesses, completely unaware that her mother was about to make a decision that would define both of their futures. The letter for Brendan had been sitting in her office safe for all these years, unopened, but today felt like the right day to finally read it. His handwriting was shaky, probably from whatever medications they had him on in the psychiatric wing of the prison, but his words were clearer than they'd ever been during their marriage. "Scarlett," it began, "I know you have no reason to read this, let alone believe anything I say, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. Not sorry I got caught. Not sorry for the consequences, but truly sorry for the pain I caused you and everyone else I hurt." She almost stopped reading there, but something made her continue. "The doctors here say I have something called narcissistic personality disorder mixed with antisocial tendencies. Basically, I'm wired wrong in my head, and I probably always have been. That doesn't excuse what I did, but it explains why I could never see past my own wants and needs. Emma looked up from her coloring book. Mama, who's that from? Someone from a long time ago, sweetheart. Someone who made some very bad choices. The letter continued for 3 pages, detailing Brendan's slow recognition of his crimes and the genuine remorse he claimed to feel. But it was the ending that took Scarlett's breath away. I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I'm asking anyway. Not for forgiveness, I don't deserve that. But please don't let what I did make you cynical about love and trust. You have so much goodness in you, and the world needs people like you. If our child ever asks about me, please tell them that their father was sick, but that sickness isn't hereditary. Tell them they come from a long line of good people on your side. Scarlett set the letter down and looked at Emma, who had inherited her grandfather's kind eyes and her mother's determined chin. At 5 years old, she was already showing signs of the Morrison family gift for business, organizing her toys with the efficiency of a CEO and negotiating bedtime like a skilled diplomat. Emma, come here for a minute. Her daughter climbed into the big leather chair, all elbows and knees and boundless energy. I want to tell you something about your daddy, Scarlett began carefully. They'd had this conversation before, in age-appropriate pieces. Emma knew her daddy lived far away, that he'd made bad choices that hurt people, and that sometimes adults make mistakes that have big consequences. Is he ever coming home? Emma asked, the question she always asked. No, sweetheart. But you know what? That's okay, because we have Uncle William and Aunt Jessa and Jake and Tommy and all the people of the foundation who love us. Family isn't just about blood. It's about people who show up for you when things get tough. Emma nodded solemnly, then brightened. Like when Mrs. Patterson brings us cookies? Exactly like that. That evening, Scarlett made a decision that felt like the final chapter of her old life, and the first page of something entirely new. She wrote back to Brendan. Not a long letter, just a few simple sentences. I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because carrying anger was making me into someone I didn't want to be. Emma will know that her father was human, flawed, and capable of both great harm and genuine remorse. She'll also know that she comes from survivors, fighters, and people who choose kindness even when it's hard. I hope you find peace. She signed it simply Scarlett and mailed it that same day. 10 years after that first devastating day when she'd lost her job and caught her husband cheating, Scarlett Morrison was no longer the woman who could be destroyed by betrayal. She was the woman who had taken the worst thing that ever happened to her and turned it into the foundation for helping thousands of other people rebuild their lives. Standing in the office that had once belonged to her father, holding her daughter's hand as they watched the sun set over their city, Scarlett realized that some stories don't end with happily ever after. They end with strong enough for whatever comes next. And that, she thought as Emma squeezed her hand 3 times. Their secret code for "I love you" was actually much better.